So you may have seen that it was announced this week that the IRS is trying to figure out whether or not they can send a bill to our current Pope, since he still has to pay taxes as Pope. You can imagine working at the IRS and getting the W-2 of the Pope, and you'd be like, what the? Boss, you need to take a look at this thing. So he's an American citizen, but he's also the head of the world's smallest country, so we'll see how this all pans out. Wow, so he was elected on the feast of the apparition of St. Michael the Archangel, May 8th. And as you know, we talked about last week, the name Leo means lion, literally means lion. And so he's elected on the feast of the apparition of St. Michael the Archangel. And the night that he was elected, he called all of the Swiss guards together. So you can imagine it was a long day, right? And so he called them all together, and he wanted to meet with the Swiss guard before they went to bed. So they're kind of nervous, understandably. Their new boss wants to talk to them. So they all come together, and they're like, And so he meets all these guys, and the first thing out of his mouth, he said, "In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit." And he says, with them all, the prayer of St. Michael the Archangel, written by his predecessor, Leo XIII, which we say at every Mass. And as you know, up until 1962, that prayer was said after every Mass in the entire world. So he said this with all the Swiss guards, and then he said, "Now go get some sleep." It's been a long day, poor guys. Courage. It takes a lot of courage, in case you haven't noticed, to live in this world today. That's what he was telling them. Gentlemen, have courage. It takes courage to live in the world, and it takes courage to one day leave this world, when that day comes for all of us. It takes courage to live our faith, and it takes courage to surrender in faith. Maybe you know what that means. It's that moment that most of us have at least some point in our life when we realize, I cannot do this, Lord. I can't do this. I don't know what to do. I've tried this, I've tried this, I've tried this. I've tried to get through to this person, but I got nothing. So we surrender. If you've ever seen Bono's book that came out last year, it's called Surrender, and that's what it's all about. Bono said he got to a certain age and he realized he had to surrender to God. It's true. It takes courage, brothers and sisters. That means that we have to push ourselves beyond ourselves. So some of you may be familiar with what's called the Quo Vadis story, which I've talked about before. If you're not familiar with what's called the Quo Vadis story in Catholic history, it goes like this. According to what Catholics believe, at the time, the first century, when Emperor Nero was killing all these Christians, he was looking for St. Peter, the head of the Catholics. And he was in Rome, and the people went to St. Peter and said, "Man, you need to get out of here, because this guy's crazy. Like, he's trying to kill you." And Peter was like, "Yeah, that's a good idea. I should probably leave." So he leaves Rome, and he's going down what's called the Appian Way, which is a famous street in Rome. And he has a vision of Jesus. It's a true story. He has a vision of Jesus carrying his cross, sweating, bleeding, carrying his cross, and he says to Jesus, "Quo vadis, Domine?" Where are you going, Lord? And Jesus tells our first pope, "I'm going to Rome to be crucified again." And with that, Peter turns around and goes back to Rome. Now, I'm often, over the years, thought about what did it take for Peter to get out of the boat walking on water, and what did it take for Peter to do an about face and go back to Rome? I'm going to go out on a limb and say it took courage. Peter was not naive. He knew he was going to die. They immediately arrested him. He was crucified upside down on the hill Vaticanus. That was the 1st century. Now, let's fast forward to the 5th century. We have our first Pope Leo, Leo the Great. How many Pope Leos have we had? 14. Okay, good. That's good. We're good. We're good there. All right. So that was the first, Leo the Great. Anybody ever heard of Attila the Hun? Aren't you glad that's not your name? Right? So at the time in the 5th century, the Roman Empire had fallen. Now I want you to imagine the American government just melts. There's no government. And people are like, okay, is anybody at the head of the wheel? There's no government. There's no leader. You know who the leader was at the time? The Pope. It's the only stable government, the only stable leader. So Attila surrounded Rome with his Huns. He'd butchered thousands and thousands of people, including his own brother, for power. He surrounded Rome on these hills, and him and his soldiers are looking down over Rome, and they see an elderly man on a horse riding up to meet him. This old guy by himself. It was the Pope. And he comes up to meet him on behalf of the people in Rome who were terrified. They'd heard all the stories. So Attila is apparently so impressed with the Pope's courage that he said, you know what, Holy Father, I'm going to make you a deal. I'm going to make you a deal. Here's the deal. I'm still going to sack Rome, and I'm going to steal everything, and I'm going to kill these people. But I tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to leave the churches, and we will not harm all the people that are inside the churches. That's what he did. As you can imagine, all the people of Rome crammed inside the church for shelter, and they could hear outside the destruction that was going on. Courage. Can you imagine getting on a horse, going up by yourself? Amazing. Let's fast forward now to the year 1884. We got a different Leo, Leo XIII, who died in 1903, 1884. Pope Leo's in the Vatican, and he's celebrating Mass. He's behind the altar, and he sees a vision up above him of what was going to come in the 20th century. As you know, in the 20th century, 150 million innocent people died under totalitarian regimes, most of whom were women and children. He saw this coming, blanched white as a ghost, sat down and wrote the prayer of St. Michael the Archangel that we say at every single Mass. By the way, 5 years after that, Adolf Hitler was baptized a Catholic. Courage. Now, let's fast forward to our own time. Only a few hours ago this very day, Pope Leo was installed as our new Pope in Rome. And you know, I had to laugh. I don't know if you noticed this. Long before he ever said one word, before he even spoke one word, there were people on the left picking him apart and people on the right picking him apart. Before he even said anything, they already decided what side he was on, if they liked him or not, right? Does anybody know, by the way, where the terms liberal and conservative come from? I mean, this is the way Americans think. You're either here or here. There's nothing in between. Anybody know where those come from? Liberal and conservative? It comes from the French Revolution. In the late 1700s in France, in the National Assembly in France, all the conservatives sat on the right side of the room. Those are the ones that defended tradition and religion. All the liberals sat on the left side of the room, those that argued for upheaval, i.e. the revolution. And it stuck. And one of the things that our current Pope has said, and I have to say I agree with him, as Catholics, it's not this or that. It's not liberal or conservative. The question is not that. The question is this. We can sum it up in one word. Truth. Veritas. What is the truth of the situation? You know, I can just share with you, parish priests often joke that we're never liberal enough for the ultra-liberals or conservative enough for the ultra-conservatives. So you usually have somebody on both sides mad at you over something. They call it getting waffled, cooked on both sides, right? I mean, think about it. Our Pope defends the poor and the downcast. Well, you must be liberal. He defends the sanctity of life and merit. Well, you must be conservative. But for him and for us, it's not a matter of this or this, it's both. Human dignity. What is the truth? That, my friends, takes courage. And I don't have to tell you, in our culture, those are fighting words. That's what sets us apart. And that's why we're still here after well over 2,000 years. So, here's the takeaway. It takes courage to live our faith, and it takes courage to surrender in faith when we realize we just cannot do it alone. It takes courage to live in this world, and it will take courage for one day for us to surrender our bodies, saying, Lord, come and get me. Everything I have is yours.